Pipeline 3.0. The occupiers are trying to get into Kupiansk through the gas network. Did they manage to achieve their goals? The Ukrainian armed forces are driving the Russians back to the border. A loud statement from Zelensky and Syrsky. A fiery setback for the Kremlin. Ukrainian drones are successfully destroying the Russian Federation's military economy. I'll tell you all the details in a moment. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Victoria Panchenko, and here are the latest events. A video is circulating online showing Russian troops infiltrating Kupiansk using the gas network. They used the same tactic that was already employed in Sudza and Avdiivka. This was reported by the analytical project Deep State.
The Russians have built an entire logistical artery. The entrances to the pipeline are located in the area of Lyman Pershi. Specially designed wheeled cots are used to move through the pipe, as well as electric scooters where the height allows. The route to the outskirts of Kupiansk takes about 4 days, so special rest areas and food supply points have been set up along the way. In this way, enemy reconnaissance groups reach Rodkivka without significant losses. Then they move south into the forest, which they control. After that, they disperse in Kupiansk and reach the railway.
The Russians have even started celebrating and holding concerts in honor of the pipe.
Good afternoon. Today is yet another holiday. We had the Kursk pipe, before that another pipe, but now it's the Kupiansk pipe. 03. I'm sure that our songs, the ones we have been creating and performing, are truly turning out to be quite prophetic in nature. There will be 04, and then 05, and there will also be the Kiev pipe, and hopefully in the future, the Washington pipe as well. And today, right now, we have a wonderful concert that is called I Love You, Russia. And I would also add pipe for you. Star of Russia, pipe.
However, the occupiers have stepped on the same rake again. Let me remind you that in court, the Russians suffered catastrophic losses as a result of gas poisoning, pneumonia, respiratory failure, and deaths from artillery shelling by the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian soldiers detected and effectively attacked the Russian group, resulting in the elimination of 80% of their personnel. Moreover, the head of the Kupiansk military city administration, Andriy Konoshevich, refuted the information from Deep State and emphasized that the entire territory of the community is under full control of the Ukrainian armed forces. However, according to him, the situation in the city remains critical. There is no electricity, water, or gas. It is impossible to carry out restoration work due to heavy shelling. The destruction is catastrophic. More than 90% of the city is destroyed or damaged. Despite this, many people still remain in Kupiansk.
In fact, Deep State are jumping the gun. There are no Russians in Kupiansk. The military constantly tell me that they are putting up a worthy resistance. Every day, the enemy throws more and more forces in an attempt to fulfill their dream of capturing the city.
The commander of the 429th Separate Achilles Unmanned Systems Regiment, Yuri Fedorenko, noted that the defense forces struck the pipeline to flood it and render it unusable.
At the moment, we do not see it being used for active movement. How long it will take the Russians to restore it, and whether it is even possible to restore it from an engineering standpoint, only time will tell.
The General Staff also confirmed that the pipeline the Russians used to advance in Kupiansk is under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. The agency clarified that this pipeline does not lead directly into the city, and its exit is under the control of Ukrainian defenders. Out of 4 lines, 3 have already been damaged and flooded, and the 4th is under the observation of the defense forces.
The situation in the city of Kupiansk and its surroundings is under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. At the same time, the enemy continues to attempt to amass forces on the northern outskirts of Kupiansk. The exit of the pipeline, which the enemy used to move personnel into Kupiansk, is under the control of Ukrainian defenders. The pipeline does not lead directly into the city. It should be noted that there are several pipelines in the Kupiansk area. 3 out of 4 lines have already been damaged and flooded. The exit of the 4th is under the control of the defense forces. A counter-sabotage operation is being conducted in the city, with search and strike actions around the city. Since the start of the operation in 2 weeks, enemy losses have amounted to 395 personnel, of which 288 are irrecoverable. On the approaches to Kupiansk, in the areas of the settlements of Ritskovka and Holubivka, our soldiers have neutralized a total of 265 Russians. In the area of the city itself, another 128. In addition, enemy personnel are being taken prisoner, replenishing the exchange fund and providing testimony that will be used against the occupiers.
Moreover, the AFU are driving the occupiers back to the border. Zelensky reported on the successes of Ukrainian forces in the Sumy region. He added that in Kupiansk, Kharkiv region, and in Donbass, the Russians are suffering significant losses, and our defenders are successfully repelling Russian assaults in the Dobropilya direction.
There was a report from Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky. There are good results in the border areas of Sumy region. Our units continue to advance toward the state border of Ukraine. Thanks to the soldiers of the 225th Separate Assault Regiment and the 71st Jaeger Brigade. The Russians are also suffering significant losses in Kharkiv region, in Kupiansk, and in Donetsk region. We continue to operate in the Dobropilya direction. It is important that the Russian assaults are being repelled by our guys.
By the way, earlier, Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky also spoke about positive trends in the border areas of Sumy and Kharkiv regions.
We are seeing positive trends in the border areas of Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Here, the decisive factor is the active operations of the soldiers from the 225th Assault Regiment, the 71st Jaeger Brigade, and Special Operations Forces units. Their combat work is an example of courage and professionalism. We continue to work side by side, shoulder to shoulder, to provide our troops with everything necessary to defend an independent Ukraine.
By the way, Zelensky previously confirmed that Russian troops got a beating from our defense forces. The enemy group in the Sumy direction simply fell apart. Their losses are so great that any talk of an offensive can be forgotten. See how the Ukrainian armed forces are driving the enemy out in the following report.
The Russians don't do so well when fighting real soldiers instead of imaginary ones. The hottest front in recent months has been Pokrovsk. It is holding out and putting up a worthy resistance to the enemy, according to the Ukrainian command. Attempts to encircle the city are also failing completely day after day. The attempt to envelop Pokrovsk from the west also could not be revived despite Russian tactical successes in the villages of Udakny and Kotlin. Similarly, on the western flank of the front, the Russians failed to enter the territory of the Dnipropetrovsk region. It is worth noting that the offensive here is purely for propaganda purposes. The Russian command wants to claim control over a part of the region where not even in 2022 did a Russian soldier set foot. However, at least in the Pokrovsk direction, the Russian armed forces are not succeeding, despite many months of pounding at the administrative border with endless assaults. Even the reserves brought in from the north are not helping the Russians to achieve their objectives. As a result of the largest redeployment this year, tens of thousands of additional Russian troops were transferred to the Pokrovsk area. This weakened the Sumy direction, but due to constant failures, the occupiers had already lost interest in it anyway.
In the Sumy direction, Ukraine's defense forces have seized the tactical initiative. At present, the maximum depth of advance by Russian occupation forces is no more than 4 to 5 kilometers. Ukraine's defense forces are successfully deoccupying settlements in the Sumy region that had been under temporary control of the occupiers, of the Russian Federation's troops. And at this point, the Russians are forced to admit it. The plans for the Sumy region have completely failed. This is precisely why units of the 155th Marine Brigade have been redeployed back to the Pokrovsk direction.
Meanwhile, the newly arrived reserves have already been introduced to the Ukrainian armed forces. For example, the day before, 4 fighters from the Skala unit managed to capture twice as many enemy soldiers on their very first combat mission. That is almost an entire squad of occupiers. As a result, our exchange fund has been replenished with 9 Russians.
They said, "Drop your weapon," so I dropped my weapon. "Take off your body armor." That's it. They told me, "Don't move, sit still." They treated me calmly, gave me water to drink, and fed the younger ones.
Another area where Russian prisoners are now counted by the dozens is near Dobropilya. The salient that the occupiers managed to create has been cut off, and there are no prospects for enemy success there.
We can already say that the exchange fund of Ukraine's defense forces has been replenished by more than 60 Russian occupiers. And the total losses of the Russian occupiers in the Dobropilya direction, according to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, in just 1 week of fighting, losses have exceeded 1,000 personnel. These are extremely serious losses for the Russian occupation army.
At the same time, under such difficult conditions, the Ukrainian armed forces still manage to advance. For example, in the past 24 hours, Kostiantynivka, the northern part of the settlement of Katerynivka, was liberated. Our defense forces have also advanced west of Andriivka-Klevtseva, continuing to push back the occupiers' bridgehead in the Novopavlivka direction.
It is undoubtedly difficult for the Ukrainian army, but they are even counterattacking now. Yes, these may not be large-scale counteroffensives, but nevertheless, they are very serious retaliatory strikes. And even on that very Dobropilia salient, it seemed that many were saying, here it is, the collapse of the front has begun, the Russian army has broken through. But no, the Ukrainian armed forces counterattacked, stabilized the situation there, and now there is a reversal.
And according to experts, there is nowhere for the Russians to expect any significant successes. That's what the analyst says. Pavel Narozny believes that for the Russian army to advance now, armored vehicles are necessary. Otherwise, small infantry groups have virtually no chance. However, the Russian leadership is not providing infantry with vehicles, and there has been no talk of air support at all for about 6 months now.
The use of Su-25 aircraft, which used to operate right near the front line, has almost completely stopped. The use of helicopters has almost stopped. If they are used at all,
They are also utilized only from a very long distance.
or it's just some kind of demonstration firing to make a video for RIA Novosti or TASS. In other words, overall, Russia stopped risking its aircraft quite some time ago, and by 2025 these risks are practically eliminated.
Meanwhile, the Russian press continues to talk about a victorious autumn offensive. According to Vitaly Gisak, commander of the 423rd Battalion of Unmanned Systems, it will be even more disastrous than the summer one. After all, with the arrival of cold weather, there will be no so-called greenery, which means enemy troop concentrations will become more visible, something our drone pilots are already eagerly anticipating. The enemy's offensive priorities are clear today. Of course, we should also mention the high level of activity and the very difficult, extremely challenging situation. In the Lyman and Siversk directions, we are also seeing a difficult situation in the Kupiansk area. Of course, we are also talking about Zaporizhia, because in Zaporizhia, the enemy is actively using, let's say, diversionary and corresponding actions. But the main focus is Donetsk region. Donetsk region is a priority for us as well, and this applies not only to the front line, but also to the rear. This was recently reminded to the occupiers in the city of Selidovo, where an entire ammunition depot was blown up right under the nose of the Russian command.
Notably, these are not the only successes of our soldiers. Oil refineries, terminals, and oil depots in the Russian Federation are now nothing but a fiery spectacle. The Kremlin is losing its main lifeblood, oil and gas. The Russian oil industry has suffered a serious blow, and with it, their ability to wage war. Ukrainian drones are doing their job, the president notes.
Today, I especially want to thank all our soldiers who are inflicting truly significant losses on Russia. Losses at the front, losses in border areas, and losses on Russian territory itself, thanks to our long-range strikes. The most effective sanctions, the most impactful sanctions, are the fires at Russian oil refineries, their terminals, and oil depots. They have significantly restricted the Russian oil industry, and this limits the war. The Russian war is practically a function of oil, a function of gas, and all other Russian energy resources. I want to thank the special forces of the Security Service of Ukraine, who recently carried out a very high-quality operation in Primorsk. This is the largest oil terminal in Russia on the Baltic Sea. There is significant damage, everything has been verified. And this is tangible for the enemy.
And what do you think about the Russians' attempts to use gas pipelines to advance? We look forward to your comments. More details will follow in the main update, and don't forget to hit the like button under the video. Wishing you peaceful skies above.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.